few bits of problems here and there. People are sending me messages. While we're waiting for the others to come in, if any of them care to join us, today I want to give a very special welcome to Julie and Walter. Walt, I should say, not Walter. Sorry, Walt.
I answer to anything.
Up there in the top left-hand corner, they've been together for a long time, and Julie has told me that Walt always gets the last word in any conversation that they have, as long as it's yes, dear. And as you can tell from the accent, Walt is an American expat. I believe Julie is from Germany, and you're still living near Munich? I should have asked that first, I think, yeah. I won't say how long they've been calling, but together they've got well over 60 years of experience calling in over 16 different countries on 4 different continents, I believe, three or 4 different continents around the world. It gives them a unique perspective of what dancing is, of what calling is, and what teaching is, because they do both the calling, the dancing, and the teaching to dancers and callers around the world. So it gives them a unique perspective to know what it is and where we have, because too often we hear well, we don't do that here, we don't do that there, we don't do this here, we don't do that here, or this would break down my floor. Both Walt and Julie have been teaching dancers and callers for many years. Walt is an accredited caller coach. Julie, you were doing your accreditation. I'm not sure if you have it yet, but if you don't, probably next week on any day that ends with Y, because they should just tick it off as a done deal, but we have to go through those check boxes. As far as Julie goes, as well as the teaching, she's being checked on her ability to teach by people that are probably well less qualified than she is. She's got a master's degree in education, teaching, speaks fluent German, English, French, and I believe you говорите по-русски язык? A little bit of Russian as well.
Very little.
Both Walt and Julie are regular featured festival callers in their own rights, as well as individual recording artists on multiple labels. Julie, you're on ESP, ANS, Snow, and Square Rhythmics. Walt, you're on ANS and Square Rhythmics. I think you're on another one too, aren't you?
No, just those 2.
Just ANS. As far as teaching and teaching the teachers and teaching the callers, Walt and Julie run and operate the New Horizon Caller School in Germany. They're both members of Grand Square International, have started up several Grand Square Europe offshoots of that. And they've been on staff many caller schools right across Europe and in Russia. So I could go on for hours with credits and accolades, but suffice it to say, if you want to dance or learn from basic through A2, teaching new dancers, new callers, teaching experienced dancers, or improving experienced callers' abilities, there's not a lot that these 2 together cannot teach you. And it bears to attest to their abilities and their passion, as I was saying earlier. They've arranged their dancing and their calling schedules to be here today to talk to all of us about that very underemphasized aspect of being a caller, and that is teaching. So I'm not going to go any further. I'm just going to hand it right over to you to take over.
Wow, thank you, Mel.
Wow.
Do we have to give you money for all that? So
no.
No, but don't you dare to screw up now.
Actually, Julie's going to do quite a bit of the presentation here tonight, because as you heard Mel say, she's a full-time teacher, high school teacher with a master's in education. So before she starts with the presentation and everything, just a couple quick comments. Teaching, you can call some of the teaching that's going on in square dancing today is plain and simple bad teaching. All right, you can call it sloppy, you can call it inaccurate, you can call it a lot of things. It's flat out bad teaching, and that's a big problem in our activity. To the point that one of the main features about square dancing has been if you learn it in one country, you can go to another country and dance. And to a great extent, we've lost that, and we've lost it because of poor teaching. We see it a lot. We see tours come through Germany, and people say, we can't dance to that. We don't know that. And it's mainstream dancing. So bad teaching is a huge problem. And Julie's going to talk a lot about good teaching techniques tonight. And I can tell you from years and years of personal experience, she knows exactly what she's talking about. So, all right? Have at it, dear.
Okay. First of all, teaching has a major impact on every student. And if I would ask each and every one of you, do you remember the caller where you learned to square dance? I bet you know who it is. I bet you remember your first nights in the square. And that is the same for every dancer. So if you still remember, and even Walt still remembers, and that is over 40 years ago, that means every person you teach will remember you. That has a big advantage because you're unforgettable. The disadvantage is it puts a lot of pressure on you for correct teaching, because everything you teach them, and then they go out and dance, and maybe in different countries, on different continents, maybe they get asked, where did you learn?
Okay.
And it has a reflect on your reputation also. Our daughter once gave me a little sign for becoming a teacher, and it said, a teacher touches a life forever, and that is true. But teaching is also more. It means also profession and passion. For me, it is a passion, otherwise I would have been wrong in my profession, what I picked for earning my money with. But it's so much more. Before we come to different teaching techniques, I would like to review quickly what it means to be a teacher, and think about what is the background knowledge we should have. And one is that we should know that there are different learners types. I'm pretty sure you all have heard about it. That's a quick review. You have the observer, the one who learns from seeing. And if we have somebody like that, we need to remember everything they see needs to be accurate. That means you need a good demonstration couple or demonstration square. And it needs to be accurate and easily seeable. You have the reader. The reader learns from reading. I met a few people and they went through basic through to C in less than 2 years. Unfortunately, these people are also become quickly bored and stick with the C, or they become callers. That is the other thing. But for them, you need to provide handouts, correct handouts. For the listener, he learns over hearing. That type is very rare. You need to give exact definitions, correct, and keep it successful, simple. The more classical person, 90% of the people learn by doing. That means they go out and learn motor skill by doing it, hands-on. For them, walkthrough repetition is everything. I put here a little chart on the left-hand side because what it shows you is that the most types of us are not a single learning type. We are mixed types. That means if you look, 90% of what we both say and do will stick to our brain and we can learn it. Our advantage is that square dancing is a motor skill. That means it involves doing, it involves action, and that makes it easy to learn for people. If you look, only 10% are readers. That is the absolute minimum of the people. We are talking in the high 5% of our society. That's all. What we also need to remember is that learning speed on the one hand side for the single individual dancers and also the group as a whole. So you have two aspects in speed. On the one hand side, the single individuals, it's a balancing act. If you're going only for the quick ones, you lose the slow ones and they will leave the club. If you're going only for the slow ones, the quick ones get bored and they leave. So you need to go back and forth. And it means also that you might have to do some extra session of the slow ones and activate your angels and spend your breaks in explaining more. It also helps if you can explain the same call or everything you want to teach. It's not only calling, it's also tradition, in different ways. A typical example, if you explain somebody a cast of 3/4 is a 3/4 turn. From a mini wave, right hand, turn 3/4. Maybe a woman doesn't understand it, or somebody who's not so good in fractions, in math. But if you say it's a 270-degree turn, that might make sense. For me, fractions are no problem, but I met people, when I talk in fractions, they say, forget it, I'm out of here. So learn to explain stuff in different ways. If you're good, you can explain everything in 5 different ways. But it means for us as teachers, studying and thinking and preparation. But we come to that more later. On the other hand, you have the learning speed as the group. The group learns in different speeds on different nights. Of course, we love these nights, what I called here the super night. Everything works, everything flows. The whole group is like a sponge and they suck it all in. Well, these nights are rare and make use of it, but don't overdo it, because there will come other nights where they're tired, where it's very hot outside, where just something happened. In Europe, the Ukraine war, that was an evening where, no, the dancers were not in it because they were somewhere else with their brain. It also goes into that mentally gone. Maybe it's shortly before holidays, summer break is then coming up, Christmas is coming up. They are already halfway out the door, so let them enjoy the evening. And also there comes the point where the group is just saturated, where the sponge is full for that night and you just go on in repetition. Any questions so far? Mel, I only see a couple of the tiles. Can you tell me if there's any raised hand? No comment from Mel?
Okay.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. No, there's no raised hand. There was one question when you said slower dancers. I'm just pulling it up. I'm writing these out as we go, so I was going to get them at the end. It says, what's your recommendation for bringing slow dancers up to speed? I mean, when I say slow, those ones that take so much time to get to where they're supposed to be. So I'm assuming they meant slow moving dancers as opposed to slow learning dancers. But I think you're probably going to cover that a little bit later.
We will deal with that, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mel. Okay, the next thing is something where you need to put your brains in a little bit more. Transfer, we call it also a building block method. Transfer means you use knowledge, what is already there, for building up new knowledge. That can go both ways. That can go in the positive way, that's what we want, and it can go in the negative way. We all know and remember from school when something was building up on something what we didn't understood in the first place, the new knowledge was poof and gone, and you never learned it. In square dancing, we need to be aware of where the negative transfer can happen and try to avoid it. And it's not the same for everybody. It's individual wise again. For example, some of us made the experience that teaching right and left grand and weave the ring on the same night goes really well, because it's a close enough movement, just a little bit different name, and the dancers get it. But it has also the potential for negative transfer because it's a close movement with just a different name. So what we need to be aware of is if the move has either a close enough name, like do sa do and do pa su, close enough name but a total different move, But if you teach both on the same night, it can easily turn into a negative transfer because the neurons in the brain don't have time enough to make that connection path and establish, and then we interfere with that learning method, learning material, what we give the dancers. So close enough name, don't do it in the same night. Close enough movement, I would stay away from that also. It's like, worst case, spin the top, spin chain through. Both starts with spin, so the name is already close, and it both has the first starting movements. So this is a double negative transfer. And we don't want to mix that up. For the boys, it would be right and left through and square through 4. Kurt, I see your hand. Yes.
Yeah, hi. But on that particular example, spin the top and spin chain through, I completely agree you want to separate those for quite a bit, for sure. But when you do go to spin chain through, you can, I think, get a positive transfer by explaining that it starts very similar and then associate the names of spin with that initial movement.
Correct. That's where the positive transfer comes in. You got it. Thanks. So after Kurt gave me the opportunity, we go right into it. The positive transfer starts if your dancer has established knowledge already, like for the spin the top. They know it inside out. You practiced it for 2, 3, 4 nights. You can build up on that for the spin chain through and say, hey, spin always starts end of adjacent center, half turn, new centers, 3/4. And now the difference comes, but they will know the first part of the move already. And that's the positive transfer. I put in here inside experience and outside experience. Inside experience is always inside our activity. Like spin the top, spin chain through. Positive transfer. And outside experience, in Germany, for example, we have the rule in traffic that if there's no sign, there's right before left. So you can explain wheel and deal from out-facing lines or in-facing line right before left, just like you do in your traffic behavior. I know that's not workable on all countries in the world. Mel, I think you have a left before right.
Yeah, so the UK.
Yeah. So for them, maybe you can use it as, don't do it as when you drive. So this would be an outside experiencing. You use knowledge from outside the square dancing world for teaching something new in the square dance world. For the negative transfer, the inside experience I explained. The outside experience would be, you have a left-hand dancer, somebody who's left-handed. He would have trouble with a lot of square dance moves. He would put a lot more knowledge in because naturally he would start everything with the left. And for him, learning a right and left through, he would have to learn, okay, my instinct is use the left hand, but I need to use the right hand. And that is something we have very little influence on.
Just a comment, guys, you don't have to send me the questions or things in personal chat. By all means, just put your hand up. I'll interrupt them if there is a question, but yes, you are correct. I believe the comment, Julie, is outside experience. It's trying to find something that's relational to their life experience that fits to the dancing. And they use the example of what you said in traffic, right-hand dancer goes first. A positive would be if you're in Germany or in America, you're on that side of the road. And to use the same example if in the UK or Australia would be a negative experience because you're contrary. If you use the same example, it doesn't work. It's your
Correct.
outside. So it could work both ways. And yes, you're correct. But please feel free to, Julie and Walter have said, feel free to chime in with your comments or put your hands up if it's relevant to that section. You don't have to send it to me in a personal chat.
Another example of positive transfer, outside experience. A couple of times we've had people in our mainstream classes who previously were contra dancers, and they already know things about timing, rhythm, dancing with other people, and that's a real strong outside experience, positive transfer. Go ahead.
Okay.
I put a
So,
picture in the chat that I use for Cloverleaf
yeah, I just saw that.
that has that same idea. I use the actual picture of a highway cloverleaf, and then I draw the arrows of where they're going to dance.
Yeah, we can use pictures for explaining moves very well. So, the 3 basics of good teaching. Let's come to what we need. And that is the same in every teaching situation. I adapted that a little bit to my knowledge from the classroom. Now, come. You have my little screen beans. I really like them. And you have preparation, the presentation, and post-mortem. In German, it sounds a little nicer, but it's the after work, what you have to do after you're done teaching, because after the teach is before the next teach. So, preparation. You need a lesson plan. You need to know what you want to teach. It's a real bad idea to show up at the club night and then think, my square is standing, what do I do now? I also need to plan my evening program. And teaching happens in all kinds of situations. It's not only class. It can happen on a club night. You have some weaker dancers there, what haven't shown up for 2-3 months. You can have guests who are freshly graduated and are not familiar with the moves you like, what your dancers are very well familiar with. Sorry, bad English. It happens in workshops. Preparation is also the hall information. When does it open? When does it close? Who has the keys? Where is the emergency kit? All that stuff is part of the preparation. Your sound and equipment. Sound and equipment is your favorite thing.
Obviously, you want your equipment prepared. You want to keep up the maintenance on it. You want to make sure it's working. It has to be adequate for whatever hall you're in. You certainly don't want to go into a sports hall or a gymnasium with a tiny speaker and a 10-watt amplifier. It's not going to work. So that takes some advanced planning, and as Julie said, it's all part of preparation. Making sure you have a backup. We had the experience of a guest caller at one of our clubs, and his mic cable died in the middle of everything, and he had no spare. So it was quick, go out to the car, dig out a spare, things like that. That's all part of preparation, making sure your equipment is ready to go, it's in good condition, you have everything you need. How many of you have ever gone to a class or a dance and realized you left one critical cable at home? Yeah. So, all part of preparation. Go ahead.
Also, information for the class. What do you want to tell the class extra? And about the class, especially if you're a guest caller. Did the other caller transfer all the knowledge? We had this situation, like you hear in my voice, I'm sick this week. And we had another caller covering for me. I had to tell him, okay, where are my students standing? What is the big difference? We have an age gap, we have some kids, we have an older lady. What do you need to be aware of? Who was there the last week? Who was maybe sick? Where do you need to repeat? It's all information, what you need. Otherwise, you stand there and look like...
I'm not ready. Yeah.
I tell you the worst situation, what happened to us. We came to a club, and I'm talking the club in Austria. They hired us for doing a mainstream and plus club night We got there and we got told, oh, by the way, we have a class running. That was the first list we got handed to. In the next 5 minutes, 3 other students from 3 other clubs came to me and handed me 3 more lists, and each list had different figures on. And the club president said, oh, it would be so nice if you could call something for everybody. And at the same night, they had student callers who wanted to have their mic time also. This is something, quick preparation was necessary. But you need to be aware of your definitions. You need to know your definitions. You need to know your music. It's a bad idea to say, hey, honey, I found a new piece of music this afternoon. Let's try it out tonight at the club night. And don't know how it sounds like. It's not cool. Now we are at the club night. We are at the workshop. We are at the class night. We are at the festival. For your presentation, there are rules for us callers. There are rules for the students. And in a class situation, there are also rules for angels. For everybody counts. Be on time. Being late is bad judgment and bad reputation and bad preparation. Put away your mobile phone. Review. Have a sense of humor. Don't single out individuals. All the things you heard about. Also tell them about square dance rules and traditions. That's also part of teaching. Teaching is not only the definitions and how the move goes. Our teaching is much, much more. And the dancers don't know it if we don't teach them. And hoping that some angel will tell them, it's a little,
I'm going to talk about angels in a minute.
yeah, risky. For the students, it's very simple. Be on time and listen and be prepared to learn. That's all they need to do. You want to talk about the angels?
For the angels, you can see there's 4 things we call rules for angels. And this is particularly important. First thing we tell our angels is no extras. No frillies, no twirls, no turning in and out, bumping, clapping, whatever. The dancers are going to learn that soon enough. Not during class. One thing we're very strict about is we do not let our angels teach. In other words, don't stand in the square and give somebody an explanation. If there's more explaining doing, that's what we're there for. So no shortcuts. We've all seen nights when we're teaching grand square and the angels do it in 26 steps. It's not correct. No shortcuts. The other thing is, you heard Julie mention about having a good demonstration couple or a good demonstration square. That's very, very important that when the students see something new, they see it done correctly. All right? Occasionally, we have had to take angels aside and say, hey, look, what you're doing is not the way the move is done. It's not the right styling. Please do it this way. 99 times out of 100, they're very cooperative. Okay, back to you.
The other thing I want you to remember, and that was tough for me personally, because in the daytime, I'm a high school teacher. My students in school have to come to me, and I don't have to be nice to them. Sometimes I don't want to be nice to them. But the square dancers, they want to come. If they don't want to come, they don't have to come. So that means you can't be strict and demanding all the time. That's where humor comes in. And they're there for having a good time. So your teaching needs to be a balancing act again in trying to pull them out of their comfort zone, but don't make them so uncomfortable that they don't want to come back. And the post-mortem, one of the main sources for your after work is talk to your partner. If your partner is not a dancer or you currently don't have a partner, you maybe have a dancer in your club or at the festival who's a close enough friend and honest enough friend who gives you a feedback what you can rely on and work with. The question what you need to ask yourself is, did the lesson plan work? What you worked out, did it work? Did it have flunks? Were there any complaints or suggestions made from the partner? May the dancers have talked to you in the break? Or did you heard something on the floor? Or did your partner heard something on the floor? A lot of dancers don't come to you as a caller because you are the caller. Ooh. But they might come to your partner and talk to the partner honestly. Were there problem students or were there problem angels? Does it need to be handled? Does it need to be handled on the same night before you leave? Or is there another reason why there was a problem that evening? Was the tempo all right? Your teaching tempo, your dance tempo? Did everybody stay till the end? We all know how it feels when it's half an hour till the dance is over and the first couples walk out the door. And it doesn't matter if they have a good reason. For us, it doesn't feel nice. And then what is the reason? Is it a family emergency? Do they have a new dog at home? Whatever. But if it's happening over and over, you might want to find out why. Were the dancers satisfied and were you satisfied? And in this way, thank you first. That's our last class. We graduated in September after our after Corona class. Every class is different from another, and you always have to start new judgment. And there will be always things where you thought, I've seen everything, I've done everything. There will be a new situation where you thought, yeah, okay, let me think about it. If a dancer comes to you and you don't know the answer, you can also be honest and say, let me think about it, let me research, I come back to you next week. Or I will text you later. Don't tell them a lie. It doesn't make you look smart.
Okay. That pretty much covers our actual presentation on teaching. I mean, there's lots and lots of things we could go on for hours about what to do in this situation, what to do in that situation. The main things are teach correctly, teach by definition, be accurate, teach thoroughly, and have barrels and barrels and barrels of patience. You heard Julie say that what our students learn in mainstream classes stays with them forever. Because let's face it, mainstream is the foundation of everything else. And what they learn from us stays with them the whole time they're dancing, quite honestly. Go ahead.
Mel, as I remember, there was the question, what do we do with slow dancers?
Well, I was just going to come back to that. I was just waiting until you're done. There's a couple of comments that came in. One, right at the beginning, you said the big advantage is that you are unforgettable to the person that first learns from you. And they added on, if you get it right, you inspire them. But also the same thing is the big disadvantage is that you are unforgettable to the person that first learns from you. If you get it wrong, they'll never forget that either. So
that's
as like most of your lesson, it is a double-edged sword. And what you said at the beginning about teach them right. If you do that right, that's the foundation that you lay. There was a question. Do you have a list? Sorry, I'm just reading a list of commonalities or things to be aware of all the time with negative transfer. You mentioned a couple. The example they gave, and this was just before you said it, was teaching square through right after a right and left through or vice versa. Is it just mind or movement when the name's different? And I think the essence of that question, is there a list of commonalities that you found of things that are negative transfer that should be avoided?
Not really not a printed up list. It's just things that we've learned over experience. Like you mentioned right and left through and square through. If you teach right and left through first, and then go on to teach square through, they both start with a right pull by. And I'm sure we've all seen somebody try to put a courtesy turn in the middle of a square through. It's because they learned right and left through, and then somebody dropped square through on them too soon. Okay.
Absolutely.
There's not really a list. It's just things we've learned by experience. I suppose we could develop a list.
The thing with the right and left through and square through, just for you to think about. I tried several opportunities. I tried first teaching square through and leave out the right and left through and teach that way later. I didn't like that because it didn't have any advantage. In the moment, what I'm doing is I'm teaching the right and left through on the third or fourth night, and then wait the square through till the 8th or 9th night. And then I start the half sashayed couples.
It gets away from the courtesy turn thing.
It's trying to avoid these trick situation, and the easiest ones what you can avoid is if you think, okay, the name sounds nearly as another name, then don't do it on the same night.
Yeah.
It's that simple. The ones with the movements, you need to think a little closer, because for that you need to have your definitions in your head and present all the time. But that is where you can do your preparation. You think at home what you do.
Somebody asked about what do you do about slow moving dance?
I was just about to bring that one up. There's just one follow-up on that is on the teaching of right and left through. They like square through first, but they teach right and left through much later on, preferring things like wheel arounds and trades and reverse wheel arounds before they do that. That's an individual nuance. I think we've all developed our own teaching lists and teaching programs, and as long as we follow the general guidelines, I think you're pretty much saying the same thing. You've played with a couple of different things and found the one that works for you with the half sashayed, and I think most callers have to do that.
It keeps the men in particular away from that instinct to want to stick a courtesy turn in there.
Yep. Okay. The one question that we had, Kurt's got his hand raised, but we'll deal with the one question first, which was, what was your recommendation for bringing slow, and we're talking slow movement, not slow learning, slow moving dancers up to speed because they take too much time to get where they're supposed to be? How would you go about fixing that?
With our classes, we start at a normal dance tempo right from the very first night. Okay. If somebody it's a physical problem where they simply can't keep up, there's not a lot you can do, because if you start pulling the tempo back and back and back, that's not fair to the other people, especially over here, because our tempo in general on special dances on weekends and festivals is considerably faster than the States. And if we start pulling back and pulling back, once our dancers graduate and they get out on a weekend or they get out on a Saturday dance, they're going to get hammered. They're not going to be able to keep up. So we actually use between 126 and 128 right from the very first night of class. And if someone genuinely cannot keep up, I have to say there's not a lot you can do except try doing extra sessions, try doing maybe some things before or after the class to encourage them to keep up to tempo.
And make the squares smaller.
And that's the other thing. We notice squares keep spreading and spreading and spreading, and pretty soon trying to do a square through is like trying to run a marathon. So we emphasize a lot, keep the square smaller, keep the square close. That helps a lot with people who are having problems with the tempo. So best answer I can give you.
Yeah, for me, it's getting them dancing on the beat first night.
Exactly.
Keep the tempo and get them moving to the beat of the music, because that solves a lot of the problems.
Exactly.
Kurt Goldhart, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm gonna first just a reaction to a couple of things. What you just said about about keeping the square tight and so forth. Yeah, that's very important. I even talk to people about calibrating their square when they square up, and I have them reach their arms out, and they should be able to not quite touch the shoulders. You don't want them
Exactly.
close enough to touch the shoulders, but you want them in the vicinity of their corners. And try to keep, as you're promenading, keep the shoulders in, keep it tight. I'll tell you though, it is really hard to get the angels to actually do that. The angels just keep promenading wide, around here at least, in the San Francisco area.
Kurt, if I may,
Yes.
we usually on the second, no later than the third night of class. I see you, Bob. Hang on a second. We get our angels off to the side, and we tell them, look, folks, we call it our angel lecture, and we're friendly about it, but we're also very firm about this is the way it's going to be during class. It's
Yeah.
our responsibility to teach these people correctly, and because it's our responsibility, we're going to insist that you dance correctly during class. Now, our class nights for our one club are mixed. They're club, class, club, class. That's the way the evening runs. During the club tips, have fun, guys. Don't care what you do. I don't watch you half the time anyway. Um, for the for the class, we insist on angels. You've got to do it correctly. We tell the boys your shoulders should be almost touching on a promenade. And if they start spreading out, it's hey guys, get it back in. So
Right.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And you have to be a little bit firm with some of the angels. Bob, you had a question. I saw your hand up.
Well, it's more of a statement. I deal with it. The slow dancers. I attempt to do a thing. I use it all the time in beginner classes through advanced. When I see that we have somebody who is not dancing to the beat of the music, I just call circle left and count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, stop. And I said, you're home, right? And believe it or not, very few squares are home. And I tell them it only takes from couple number one to where couple to the next couple is, it's 4 steps. And you repeat that until you get back home. And then I says, we'll call it again. Circle left, and I count 4. And to this day, every square nails it right on the beat. And if they can do that circle left and maintain the thing, they get all the way home at the right time. And I said, this is what square dancing is about. It's kind of like a car. And if you have one person going slow, it's like having a broken gear. Things start to fall apart. So it's very important to dance that. And it works on a promenade, and I'll do the same thing. And usually I keep doing that, and I do it on a regular basis in my club. And I say, let's tune up the square. Let's all get on the right beat and call it. And for me, it's worked like a charm.
Thank you, Bob. Chris Stacy and then Kurt. But Chris Stacy, you have your hand up?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was
Chris,
just gonna,
Chris and then Kurt.
yeah, I was just gonna amplify what you were saying about teaching, but it's not even just for the slower dancers. It's all the dancers. At some point, I was teaching a beginner class just a couple of weeks ago, and not their regular, I'm not their regular teacher. They had me come in and fill it in, and I spent time with them on keeping the square small, and those things that we talked about. I also spent a fair amount of time talking to them and showing them and having them try out just how to do pull by type movements. And we did a couple other things like that. But there, those physical things that you do, sometimes those get overlooked, and they're really very important for success. Not even just if the people slow, but I think that at least in the U.S., I think a lot of that stuff gets skipped over these days, and it's really important for dancer success.
I totally agree with you, Chris. And I mean no disrespect to anybody, but when we call in the States, which is 2 or 3 times a year, we have to be very, very, very careful about what we say. because what we're finding more and more and more is things have been either not taught correctly or they've been half taught. I'll give you an example. One of the NSDCs, one of the National Square Dance Conventions, I was in the mainstream hall, and I had one square that no matter what I said, they broke down. Afterwards, they happened to be standing on the side, and I went and talked to them and said, hey, I saw you were really having trouble. Can you tell me what the problem was? And this lady literally said, you weren't calling swing through properly. I only know one way to call swing through, and that's to say swing through. And she said, no, everybody knows it's swing through, boys run. I said, that's 2 calls. No, it isn't. And the whole square was insistent. Swing through, boys run is all 1 call. Well, dummy here didn't let it go. I said, well, who taught you to dance? Who's your club caller? And she said, oh, that's him right over there. So I went and spoke to this guy and introduced myself, and I said, I got a question for you. A group of your dancers just told me that they've been taught that swing through, boys run is all 1 call. And he said, well, yeah, it is. This guy's teaching dancers. We see this a lot. We see
A lot.
You know, it's really ironic that you would say that, Walt, because we had that exact same conversation about swing through and boys run about 3 weeks ago with a couple of other callers. Had that same conversation.
Don't get me wrong.
I don't know if it was the same caller, but it was the same issue.
Could well be. We love coming to the States to call. We really do. But it's a dramatic difference between Japan and Europe and coming. We've not been to Australia yet. Japan and Europe are dramatically different. And a lot of it is the difference in teaching. We were talking about slow dancers, though. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do. Remember the lady in Missouri?
Oh,
We were calling.
I think that's a yes.
We were calling a mainstream dance, literally at my sister's club. And this one lady, older lady, came to Julie and said, your husband is going so fast. I was all the way down to 122. But I'm going so fast. We found out later, and she was up every tip. This lady was 93 and had 2 hip replacements. Now, all credit to her, she was still dancing, but she was complaining about there's nothing you can do in those situations.
Yeah. Well,
in contrast,
overall,
we had a dancer here who got up and danced at a dance a couple of years back, and she says, "Oh, finally!" Everybody was calling slow when she was dancing. She went to the open dance and was dancing every tip. It was not a slow dance, and she says, "Oh, thank God, somebody's actually calling at a proper dance speed. It's more comfortable to dance." The reason she wasn't dancing is because as soon as they saw an old person on the floor, they started slowing it down, where it became uncomfortable. Bob, before you jump in, we've got Kurt waiting with his hand up. Unless it's relevant to exactly what was being said there.
Mel?
Hold it.
Mel?
Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm driving in a car, and whenever I've got 2 comments, just call me and I can step in because I can't see anything with hands up or whatever.
Okay. Well, we've got Kurt. Bob, was your comment related to what was being said right there? Bob seems to have frozen on us.
oh, well, were you talking to me? I'm sorry. Yeah. That's one of the things that I don't know how the other countries are, but I suspect that the dancer population in the United States, it's getting older everywhere. But these 90-year-old plus dancers, we're seeing more and more and more of them. And it's not so much that they can physically keep up. The thing is, their minds slow down too with age, and they're slower to respond. And that's just something we have to live with. Now, sometimes we get a person who's so bad, they're destroying it for the club. And I had a club out in Concord, and this was 40 years ago. We had this guy take the class, and the club named him the tree because he moved as fast as a tree does. He just got somewhere and grew roots and couldn't go. And it was interesting because there was another phenomena with that. I used to have 20 squares on the floor most of the time. And whatever square the tree was, if he was couple number 3, the square behind him would also break down because he was such a distraction. And that's another thing, that when you have somebody who really is too slow, they're a distraction not for their own, just for their own square. They're a distraction from other squares. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and say, this isn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go on with anybody, 'cause I see a couple more hands up. Daryl and Kurt's got his hand up. Julie would like to add something in here.
What I want to remind you, and Kurt, I know you have your hand up so long, and thank you
It's
for
fine.
being patient. More and more, what I see from the mainstream committee, also at Color Lab, is that comments are coming. We want to drop calls from the mainstream list what have raising the arms, like
Star through.
California twirl, also the dive through.
Lots of that, yeah.
And the thing is, what we are not allowed to forget as callers, it might be tricky for the older dancers, but for the new dancers, these hand connection moves are their security line. A new dancer can much easier learn a start through and have that hand as a contact point and feel safe than teaching a slide through and say you need to turn on your own. It's the same that we would not tell a kid you learn to run before you learn to walk.
Bob, you mentioned about dancers getting older, and I'm gonna make you a little bit jealous now. In Europe, and we've also seen it in Japan, just using our own club as an example, our Friday night club, the average age is about 35.
Phew.
Quite
I don't
serious,
even have a dancer that young.
quite seriously. And that's a whole lot of the average in Europe, all right, just as an example. Kurt, I haven't forgotten you, but there's a guy here in the lower corner of my screen that I would really like to get a comment from. Corbin, brace yourself because I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Yeah, you. Unmute. Unmute.
The first question is, what have I done?
You haven't done anything yet. Now,
I just
for
got
those of-
here.
You've got
I just
really
showed
bad
up.
feedback. You got real bad feedback.
Sorry, I just got here.
Okay.
I'm just listening.
For those of you who don't know, Corbin is a specialist with handy-capable dancers. And I follow a lot of stuff that goes on with his Hakuna Matatas. Corbin, if I can ask, how do you deal with dance tempo with your group? Do you run the same tempo? You do. Okay.
Yeah. Am I still coming in bad? Badly?
Now you're squealing.
You got a
You're-
bit of feedback, Corbin, but you are coming through fairly clear.
We can hear you. You're a bit feedback.
Is that any better?
That's a lot better.
Okay.
Now,
You got to turn those headphones off.
Average age of our dancer is about the same that Walt said, probably between 30 and 35 with our handy capables. And whenever I'm calling at my regular clubs, they're telling me to slow it down, where at the handy capable clubs, there's always telling me to speed it up.
That came
Now
through
I'm
clear,
okay.
Corbin, but when you're speaking, there's a very high-pitched squeal. It's almost as loud as you are. So I don't know if it's coming
Okay,
through on
well-
your mic, but it's a bad feedback squeal.
I just planned on listening. I didn't know I was going to be speaking.
No worries.
Kurt,
Kurt,
you
you
still
had your
have-
hand up. Let's go to Kurt if we can, because he's been waiting patiently for a while. And then I've got Mickey Braithwaite has a comment. So after Kurt would be Mickey.
Yeah, so now there's three things but I'm going to try to be real quick with them. I want to follow up on So on the arches, the star throughs and such, I completely agree with you that we have to keep that as an important part of the activity. But what we need to do as teachers is teach the people who have physical challenges ways to work around it, like the slap hand star through. Once you've learned the basics, that there are ways to avoid it, you know, and the dive through, you can just kind of left the hand without connecting and then let it go, stuff like that. Back to what Chris Stacy said, I definitely agree that it's important to teach the physical issues as well as the definitions of calls. I have always put a specific line item on my lesson plan to teach timing for pull by and arm turns, and how it's important to release the hand on a pull by before you even reach the other dancer. And then back to something earlier, Julie just touched on about, you know, experimenting with teaching right and left through versus square through in different orders and doing different things. I want to generalize that. It's really important for anybody who's teaching to try different things and pay attention to how well they work. And you eventually, you know, you can get all kinds of hints from other people and from seminars like this. But when you're doing it in practice, you want to just try things and see how they go and learn from it.
Okay.
Mel, Daryl had his hand up.
Yeah, I've got Mickey first and then Daryl. And then we'll get to you, Bob. And then Roz. Mickey, are you still with us?
Okay, yeah, I'm still with you. I'm on.
Yep.
Okay, two things. Nice presentation from Julie and Walt, really nice, especially the things that Julie brought up. And regarding timing or speeding up dancers, as Bob mentioned already with a circle, I think it's a cute idea. And I use it with counting the steps. Like if I go on a ladies chain, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we got to be done. Okay. And so I pick certain calls, and then it is a kind of competition for the dancers to achieve that goal. And once they've got the pace, they will keep it up. And otherwise, you go again and count the calls, the beats, and then you say, now we should be done. And whoever moves now is too late. You got to speed up, right? So this is one thing which I use. And the other thing was just coming back from a dance and a college training with the college chef suit, and had some eyebrow rousers at the same topic with the square through and the right and left through. And I have a solution which has been very successful. I've been using and analyzing those two calls. The first 6 steps are absolutely identical. And we have things which sound the same, like grand square, right and left grand, or like spin the top, spin chain through. We have things which may look the same. We have calls which feel the same, and it's hard, especially for beginners, to keep them apart. And the same thing is with, it looks the same, the first 6 steps, a right, left through, the square through, up to that second hand with the left. And it feels the same when walking. So how can we distinguish it? And with my dancers, I have them count loud on the square through. And there are 2 benefits to it. The one is that when later on we play things like on the 3rd hand or whatever, they know that they're on the 3rd hand, on the 4th hand, and we have never counted on right and left through. And I really played this with other callers and said, just try it out. And they all said, if they count loud, and even if they had problems continuously with the right, left through and the square through, they're gone just like that. And it's because we support our unconsciousness or our consciousness with the unconsciousness because we have never counted. And there's a difference now between the 2 calls. It works over here. It's been proven over 20 years. I've been using that. Ran into it by accident, and I think this is one thing you should try. And as far as I figured out, it works. Yeah,
Well, Julie, before we go to Daryl, did you want to address that? Thanks, Mickey.
Welcome.
Walt, Julie, did you want to address that? You're on mute.
We're having a lot of trouble hearing Mickey. I know he was talking about the right and left through and square through, and we could hear part of what he was saying. It sounded like a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
We're
Talking
he's
a lot about the counting, making sure that you have the counts and they're actually audibly counting, as well as a few other little tricks that he said. It would come out on the video. It was probably hard to hear, but yes, I agree with you fully. There's a lot of really good suggestions. There's a lot of things that many callers do right that you should emulate, and many things that callers do wrong that you should identify and make sure you don't emulate.
and avoid. Yeah.
And don't
Yeah, we've got-
forget, you can learn from good and from bad examples. Nobody is so bad that he can't work or be used as a bad example.
Daryl, you had your hand up, or were you just applauding?
Well, I had my hand up some time ago. I was waving back at Corbin's, I assume, daughter there. Hi, baby. Well, Julian, nice presentation. It seems to take so long to get there. I'm an old fart, you know.
Oh,
I have these things that.
There's two of us, Daryl. There's two of us.
Yeah, I should say this, but by the time we get around to it, I forget most of what I was going to say. I will say a couple of things, though. As far as dancers coming up to me and saying, "You call so fast," typically, that means that they probably dance to a caller that's doing stop-go timing. If you give them continuous flow and good timing, they will feel like it's going very, very fast compared to what they're used to. But I do want to share one little thing with everybody here. Years back, I asked a caller friend of mine, I said, well, how in the world do you know what to call when you're traveling around the country like that? He said, well, what you do is you find out what they can do and you call it. If there's stuff they can't do, you don't call it. And then this fella seemed to know what he's talking. You probably heard of him, Marshall Flippo. Anybody ever heard of him? He was fairly successful at what he did, because he would go up there, he'd pick up that microphone, and within a few movements, he knew the floor that he was calling to, and whatever they could do, he entertained them. And I would suggest that as well. Get yourself to the point where you can look out there. If there's people struggling, either find a way that you can get that message across. Don't expect the dancers to dance up to your ability to call. I think that's what I'm saying. You call to their ability to dance.
Thank you, Daryl. I'm glad somebody said that.
Always good advice.
100% agree with you.
Roz, you had your hand up, and then we're going to Bob, unless did you have anything to add on to that? Walt, Julie?
No, Daryl said it all. The only thing
Yeah.
I can tell you is, Daryl, something that we do, especially when we go into a place that we don't know, is first couple tips, we gradually start raising what's called the degree of difficulty until we see people start to stumble or start to struggle, and then we back up a little bit. That's as far as we go. I was always taught, when I was first learning to call, a couple centuries ago, if you got 10 squares on the floor and one of them is standing, you're probably okay, because there's always going to be one that's a little bit weak. If two of them are standing, you might ought to change what you're doing, and if a third one stops and is standing, you're way over their head and you need to change what you're doing. That's how I was taught, and I firmly believe that. One other thing, Daryl, you really got my brain going here. You mentioned about stop and go dancing. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the idea. Stop and go dancing is very, very tiring. Right?
Oh,
Dancers
yeah.
will get that poor timing, poor metering, whatever you want to call it, wears them out quick. And that's potentially one of the reasons they're going out the door at 9:30 instead of 10 o'clock. It's because they're tired.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
of the poor timing, Thank you, Daryl. You gave me two good ideas.
We got Roz in the wings, and then we've got Bob Elling.
Yes, just on the older people, we had someone over 90 who was very slow, but I noticed it was in the promenades. So I thought she's taking small steps, and she was also lining up in front of her partner. So you had 5 people in the middle going round. So I addressed that bit and I said to her, try to make bigger steps. You've got to be careful on what you say, because the next bracket she did bigger steps, but she did them slow, not to the count. So you have to be really careful on your explanation. So
Yes, your explanation always have to be correct. And what Walt told me in the beginning of teaching square dancing, that I talk too much. And I need to shorten it and shrink it down to the essential and still be correct.
Before we go to Bob, I just want to make one comment. Walt has been awarded not only the highest honor in France, but the highest honor in Germany and the Victoria Cross, because he's the only man that I know that was able to tell his wife that she talks too much and get away with it. Sorry, Julie, you set that up. I had to take that.
Thanks a
have
lot.
to say
Thanks a
something.
lot, Mel. It's going to be a
I have
long
to say
night.
this.
Thank you.
Walt,
You
Walt?
you wait, we will see us in
Walt?
person.
Walt,
Yeah,
Don't-
Daryl.
don't sleep with your mouth open.
Go ahead, Bob. You've been waiting a while.
Okay, 2 things. Okay, number 1, on the square through, when I first teach it, I say, now this is one of the most used calls in square dancing, and we're going to learn how to draw a square shape with our hands. And so I try to get the mental image of the path that they're going to do before I do it. And I was just thinking, oh, what the heck, I'm going to do left square through early on too. But also you can do things to try and prevent that courtesy turn. You get them facing in, and just says shake left hands and pull by and face your partner, and just use that as a thing to wean them off the courtesy turn if that's a problem. The other issue is the stop and go dancing, and Walt, you just absolutely nailed it. And I tell people, I want you to do an experiment, and you should take callers out. I'd like to take them out in mass who call that stop and go crap. Go out on the street, and I want you to walk around the block, but you got to do it this way. You got to take 4 steps and stop. Count to 3, take 4 steps and stop. Count to 3, and just keep doing it. And try, and I hope you can all visualize how exhausting that would be. And that's exactly what stop and go dancing is, or calling. It's horrendous. It's an
Ladies and
abomination.
gentlemen, yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right, Bob. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just past the top of the hour. So those of you that have only allocated an hour, by all means, don't feel obligated to stay, but we're more than welcome. Walt and Julie are going to stay as long as they can. It's now just after midnight there, I think, and times are going to be changing soon. So it'll be earlier a bit soon. I just wanted to pass on a greeting from Brian Hotchkiss. He's tried to get in a few times. He wanted to pop in and say hello. Unfortunately, hasn't been able to connect. But I'll pass that on. And we've got Brian and Guido with their hands up. So go ahead, Julie.
One second before we go on. What Bob mentioned, this different styles of teaching. Whoever's phone is ringing. Okay. Think outside the box when you're teaching sometimes. If you have a problem student or a problem dancer, think outside the box. Maybe it would help if you take a piece of chalk and draw lines on the dance floor for them. Or I had dancers come to me on stage so they can see the square on top. I also used terminations and showed them how the move goes and tell them, you follow this dancer number so and so in this color. You can have a flip chart taking the view or poster. You can use pennies and put them on the dancers. Think what the dancer needs to learn the move if you're in class. And that includes beginning and finishing formation. What does the figure do? All of that. Think outside the box.
Absolutely. Got Brian Clark.
So Julianne had mentioned bad examples, and speaking as somebody who's spent my entire career being a bad example for everyone, it's exciting. You know, it's very good that I'm providing a service for all of you, and you're welcome.
Brian, I have to tell you, the dancers in Slovakia have all recovered from when you were here, so you don't have to worry about that. Guido.
Guido.
Yeah. I understand the problem with courtesy turn and square through. Happens to me sometimes, but then mostly I get distracted and wrong positioned when I courtesy turn somebody. But I'm still fast enough in my brain to fix that error, and that's not a problem. But something else I have observed. How do I teach male dancers that Dixie Styles on Ocean Wave is not a two ladies chain?
First recommendation is, quite honestly, show them or tell them the correct definition of Dixie style. The correct definition is the right-hand dancer steps in front of the left-hand dancer. They don't start it from here. They start from here.
Walt, I know this, but when I look at dancers, they usually, if they step to the right, they turn and a Dixie style to a wave for many men feels very, very similar to a two ladies chain. And when the lady comes across, they courtesy turn her.
Okay, the way we get around that in our classes is we start from a half sashayed couple.
Or a boy-boy girl.
Or a boy-boy or a same-sex couple. And we teach Dixie style that way before we put them in normal couples. That eliminates that ladies chain effect to a great extent. The other thing that we insist on is that that right-hand dancer steps in front of the left-hand dancer.
Well,
okay.
I teach that all. I teach it, and still I encountered then, especially men who dance sloppy, and they courtesy turn the oncoming lady. But I think there is not such an easy solution as the counting down or counting up on a square through to avoid the courtesy turn on the right and left through on a square through. But to go back to the very beginning of your presentation with the positive transfer, one of the worst moves the mainstream committee did was move fan the top to plus, because all the top calls we have here in mainstream and plus are a fan the top with nothing or something before it. So fan the top is the root call.
You know, quite honestly, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to keep my mouth shut about what the committees did.
One thing you all want to remember, it sometimes makes sense, or it often makes sense, the first formation and arrangement you teach a call from, that sets the basic tracks on what the dancers will remember.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for Dixie style to maybe teach it from a boy-boy, girl-girl position, so they're not getting used to, oh, it's a two ladies chain. The same for Past the Ocean. What I learned when I was 18 years old and in apprenticeship, and I learned to be a hotel manager before I became a teacher. I got told a satisfied guest tells it as 7 people, an unsatisfied 13. If we turn that and transfer it into learning, you have to correctly do a move around 7 to 10 times for get the first information correctly done. But to reteach a move what was taught incorrectly takes 13 times. That means 5 times more. And if you go now and have done it wrong time 10 times and you need to do it correctly, the 10 plus 5 is 15 times 10 is 150 times. For undo the 10 times you do it wrong, just for the mathematics under you.
Now,
One of the, one
what
of the
I
things
wanted-
that I
no,
sorry, go
what I
ahead.
wanted to what I wanted to add is before I teach Dixie Styles and Ocean Wave, I use a C3B call to get them acquainted to the route, and I used the call bell hop, which is actually from normal couples a ladies walk and boys dodge single hinge, or if you have it half the shade, boys dodge and ladies walk single hinge, which distinguishes actually the Dixie Style to an Ocean Wave only by the right pull bite action. So this is, but still I encounter men, especially men, to do the courtesy turn. I was just asking if there is a simple trick to it, because I really have him on the route with a full half sachet motion, not just in front, but even farther to the right.
Thank you, Guido. Chris Stacy has his hand up.
Yeah, I was on the Dixie Style to a Wave. I was just going to go back to I forgot who said it now, but they were talking about differentiating calls, and so you having some mental differentiation. I know it was the square through and right and left through. Or on one of them, we always count. I think that was the example when you're learning anyway. And so the thing that I always emphasize on the Dixie Style to a Wave is like you were talking about. You get the girl in front. I always make a huge deal about how you have to get lined up in that single file setup. And I emphasize that the guy has to actually get behind the lady. I tell him, I say, the cue that I'm going to give you, and again, this is a cue that'll help differentiate it, even though later on they won't need this crutch. I'm going to say, put the lady in the lead. And what I really mean by that is put the gentleman behind. So you're going to have to really step behind her, and she's going to be in front of you, and you're going to be lined up straight like this. That's how this call starts. And so I think that by making this huge deal about the alignment and the guy has to get behind and whatever, and that doesn't happen on the ladies chain. That one's taught differently. And I think that helps along with the cue, put the girl in the lead or whatever.
Mel, Chris, can I stop you there for a second?
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm done anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Julie would like to address what you just said.
Chris, in the moment you do that, what you tell the dancers is the ladies always doing the right pull by in the Dixie Style, because that's the first thing you told them. The man goes behind. And what are they doing if they're half sashayed or in a boy, boy, girl, girl?
Later on, I'll teach them. I generally, I like to have them doing it from all the positions, but that's one where I would defer having. I would show them later after they got that one pretty good. Then I would say, okay, now I'm going to show you how to do it if you're in the other position, and you remember, guys, how you had to be behind and whatever. Now it's the girl. And so I would just do it that way.
Thank you, Chris.
The comment that I was going to have on that is there's been a lot of general commentary, and there's a lot of things that are coming out thinking outside the box, but I'd like to take a step back to what Walt and Julie were saying earlier. And on Dixie Style in particular is one that I've found a lot of success with. The standard position is ladies lead Dixie Style. The standard calls is ladies lead Dixie Style. There's all that. Over in Europe, I know that I started with 4 boys, and you learn the movements that way. A lot of people learn it differently. But the best advice I ever got for Dixie Style was, we have a definition, we follow the definition, but what what we're missing out of this equation is, what do you review before you're going to do that? And the thing that I've always had the most success teaching Dixie style is the tips before I get back into using left touch a quarter a fair bit, because that's what happens. But you've got the right hand and a left touch a quarter, and that's where your definitions come in. And if you've got that left touch a quarter, they know it's a quarter. They know they established the hand contact. What you're doing is you're reinforcing what's already known, because they know to stop. And then you can reinforce it further with left touch a quarter, boys take hand, boys trade, followed, or centers take hand, centers trade, whatever you've got in there, or even a swing for that matter. But that's what it, building from what they know. Go ahead.
Mel, much as I hate to say it, we've thoroughly enjoyed this. We'd like to do some more sessions with you. We're going to sign out here very shortly. It's almost 12:30 in the morning here, and we're on the road about 9 o'clock. So
okay, well, Daryl had his hand raised up, and then Kurt had his hand up. If you got time for 2 more questions, and then we'll call it there. 2. Go ahead, Daryl.
Daryl, you're muted. Okay.
I'm on. Okay. Here again, everything passes so quickly here that it. One thing I did want to say for the newer callers, especially, that I don't see any on here right now. I still say that teaching 2 couples is the best way to teach. Sicilian circle, as far as getting the dancers through stuff. As far as the Dixie style to an ocean wave, I teach a 2 ladies chain with the girls stepping in, the boys slip over behind the girls, take their spot. It's a dodge, and that gets those left hands ready for the courtesy turn. There's no question about what hands are going to do. Dixie style to a wave, if you're going to call that on the open road in the United States, yes, you'd better have the ladies lead Dixie style to an ocean wave.
Yeah, we learned that.
We learned that one the hard way.
But there again, I'll go back to what I said before. That's standard applications, and you better know what is standard, and you're going to run into those little odd things from town to town, or area to state to state, country to country, probably. And you better find a way to adjust to those right up front. As far as teaching square through, did you ever consider, if you were doing 2 couples in a Sicilian circle, you can teach a right and left grand, and you can teach a wrong way right and left grand at the same time. And there's a lot of similarity between a wrong way right and left grand and a square through.
Especially with 2 couples.
With 2 couples.
Nice thought.
Yeah.
Now,
okay, we've got
always
we've said that we're limiting it to 2. We've got Kurt coming up with the last question, but we will leave the chat room open, because I'm quite sure there's a lot of examples and discussions that are going on. So Kurt, you get the last question for Walt and Julie.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. And I was going to ask for your insights on one call that I always see people struggle with in every class very early in the class, which is couples circulate, in a way that I don't quite see why they're having trouble. And it's usually the center trailer. They always seem to want to bend in instead of going straight forward, even though I show them, I say it multiple times. There's a person in front of you, there's a back, follow that back, walk straight forward into their spots. You're gonna either go straight forward, or you're gonna go around the corner. If there's somebody in front of you, go straight forward. This last time, then I added a diagram, and I think it helped. But what is the thing, the misconception that's driving that?
I know exactly what you're talking about. They want to look back over their shoulder, see who's coming up behind them. We do a couple things, and sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. We teach centers circulate before we teach couples circulate. And the reason we do that is we tell them you're on a path, you're on a racetrack. The only direction you can go is forward. There's somebody coming up behind you. Don't look over your shoulder, because they're coming up behind you. If you don't get out of the way, you're going to get run over. Right? We teach them you're on this path. Then we teach the ends. You are on a path, and you can't get off either the inside path or the outside path. When it comes down to couples, we teach the same idea. There's somebody coming up behind you. Don't look back over your shoulder. Look where you're going. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, we face a little bit of a what do I want to say? Because of the language barrier, we have to be careful how we explain things. The idea of don't look back, always go forward, seems to make a pretty good, or give a pretty good, clear direction to our dancers. That's the best I can tell you, Kurt.
Kurt, what you might want to try is talking in pictures. It's not kid friendly, but I tell the dancers, you're racehorses on a racing track. Did you ever saw a horse winning by getting their butt over the finishing goal first?
Okay.
That's
They
a
get
good
the idea
analogy.
pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's a problem. It's the same problem over here. It's exactly the same thing. Is that inside dancer is looking back to see who's coming up behind him.
Yeah,
Some of it's-
I kind of switched to that a little bit this last time in the middle. I thought, well, let's try that, and it did seem to help a little bit. But and my initial reaction in all the years has been that it's the other way around, like the star through, that the handhold of the couple helps them go to the right place. But in this case, it seems to be a little different effect.
I never had that problem.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the time limit. I know Walt and Julie have to get up early tomorrow because they're on the road again, I believe.
Yep.
And I want to thank you both very much for coming in and sharing your insights, as well as your look at teaching from the outside aspect of teaching, not just how to teach a square dance movement, but how to teach to learn, and how to teach both students and teachers from those aspects. It is, as I said, one of those topics that is not covered enough in collar curriculum. It's glanced over, and it's something that we as teachers should all be spending a lot more time with, even on our own. There's a lot of material. Walt, Julie, I want to have you both back if we can.
Absolutely.
So
let's do it again.
The timing and the scheduling, of course, I will work to your schedule, because I know getting you both out is very difficult. But everybody, if you would please, let's give a big hand for Walt and Julie for taking the time with us today.
Thank you, everybody.
And definitely want to have you back. The video and the links to the PowerPoint presentation are going to be up on the OC Callers website. And thank you to Mark for looking after that. We will leave the room open for discussion, because there's a lot more things that people have probably got questions to ask, and there's a wealth of experience in the room. But thank you very much, and I hope to see you here, if not somewhere else, and maybe one day even over here in Australia.
That would be cool. Thank you, Mel.
That's one of the places that we've always said we want to tour Australia. We want to come and call, and we haven't quite got there yet.
We want to meet Mel Wilkerson in person.
We do?
And harass him.
I've met you before, Walt.
Where?
Back in Europe, 1980s, 80 through 84. I was over there.
I have a good excuse. I was not born yet.
Had to be earlier than that, Mel. 83, 84, I was in Japan.
81 through 84, I was in Germany.
80, yeah, 81, right along in
I think it was it Hamburg or Heidelberg? No.
Would have been Heidelberg.
Yeah, Heidelberg. Yeah.
Yep.
You were up there with Bob Moffat, I think, one time.
For sure.
Yep.
It was nice to see you all. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. I'm sorry I had to cut a couple of you off. Bob, you got your hand up, ready to go. And thank you all. If you do want to stay, by all means, the floor is open. We're going to have open for discussion, and I will leave it open, but you don't have to stay if you don't want to. Bob, you've got your hand up, and then Chris. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I made that comment about I've never had that problem of them looking back for circulates. I have this comedy routine I kind of go through when I first teach circulate. Heads lead right, veer left. Where is the next couple around? Okay, so you know where that couple is. They're meeting at McDonald's. everybody go to McDonald's. Well, now that other couple is at Burger King. Move up to Burger King, and I just uh, I just go through a whole litany of things, and then maybe when the girls are on the center circulate, then you go to In-N-Out Burger, and they're laughing at this whole thing, and go to Taco Bell, whatever. And I just go through and I try to think as many different things as I can. And like I say, I have never experienced somebody looking back.
I think of it as Italian race car driving. What's behind me doesn't count.
I don't have to say that because that'll put it in their mind to look behind them. I say, where's the next couple? Couples circulate. Where's the next couple? Go to Burger King, whatever. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's fun for me. And I like to try to remember that we're here to entertain dancers, not to develop, automated machines that can
That was
do
one of
all
the
this.
things that both Daryl and Walt and Julie were saying. One of the biggest aspects is having the dancers moving, but having the dancers dance and having fun. It's that social aspect we were talking about at the beginning. And if they are doing it, it doesn't really matter if you've got a limited repertoire. Guido gave the example. He uses a C3B call to get that forward into the left touch quarter to break the Dixie style habit. For a lot of us, that's not an option. For a lot of us that are teaching, I know I was teaching mainstream for 8 years before I even started thinking about plus. And I didn't dance plus. I didn't want to dance plus. Had no interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that in your repertoire, think outside the box. As I said, the best advice that I was given on Dixie style was make your review on Dixie style. Don't use the ladies chain. Use a wheel around and make sure you emphasize your emphasis calls preparing for it is the left hand touch a quarter. That sets the template for the review. Little things like that, which are obvious after the fact, are like the little plastic tabs on your shoelace. They're so obvious, but somebody had to think about that. If you think of that plastic tab, there's always a way of finding a different way of explaining it, which is what they said. Chris Stacy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just back on the couple circulate thing that Kurt brought up. The I think the reason that I see that well, in fact, I taught couples circulate to those beginners the other day, and they were doing that. That's the first thing they did was the in phase, the trailing couple had a little trouble, and it's because obviously the centers are not the center girls, if it's a normal couple, they're not letting go of their hands. So the beau there, he's going forward, and then the girl, she's like kind of back, with her arm back. You can see the problem is that she's still holding on. You can't focus on going forward. So I just make a huge deal about this is a couples circulate. You're going to be holding on to the person who's in your couple, and you're not going to be holding on to the other people. You got to let go of them, because it's almost a no hands move, except that you're going to be with your your partner. Now that's a little bit of a lie, because the out facing couple, those girls, well, no, that's not even true. Yeah, no, they all got to let go. But anyway, that I just emphasize the letting go, and that seems to fix it. And all the other things that we said about the racetracks and what have you. Yeah, that's all the standard stuff. And I have great success with couple circulate. I actually teach it very, very early on, really early on in the program, because it's a fun move. And the other thing I show them really early on is chain that kind of goes with it is chain down the line, because they know ladies chain already, and so that gives you a bunch of choreography, and you can get them in the lines facing, and it moves them around. And so I happen to like those two calls a lot, and I teach them really quite early.
Don't be afraid. I'm in. Just walked in the door. Picture is coming.
Okay. All right. I wanted to say something about Dixie style because of all things, I workshopped it to my club my new club, and they weren't doing it well. And it was so easy. I did do a half sachet. Now from here, the ladies lead with a right pull by, left touch a quarter for the Dixie style. Doing it half sachet, it's a lot smoother call. But I use that to emphasize to the boy, if I say girls lead Dixie style, you've got a sachet. And it went so smooth. I mean, they went from a bunch of stumbling idiots to a performance team. It's just incredible. And next week I'll be doing from a normal couple, boys lead Dixie style, right pull by, left touch a quarter. Well, everybody's in a nice position to do the call very smoothly.
Yeah, I really emphasize the alignment there and getting them lined up. That's a crucial part of the call. Once you have them there and they're lined up, then you can say, okay, look, from here, now the centers are going to be doing a right pull by and a left touch a quarter, which again, you've shown them left touch a quarter already, plenty. So, that whole, now that's not how you're going to dance it. It's going to be smooth when you dance it. You're just going to go into the move. But when you're teaching them the pieces of it, I think that the alignment of the beginning double pass through and okay, stop. This is where the call really begins from, right pull by, left touch a quarter. That makes it a lot different than ladies chain.
And I use a lot of head slide through single file Dixie style. And that works very well, followed by the walk and dodge wheel around routine. And I don't think you can hear me call a dance at plus or above without using that.
I have a question to Bob. I may misunderstood something, but on the couple circulate, you said something about not turning around, but you said, I know bows and bells, but you said something about Taco Bells. And then you said, we're going to McDonald's, and I was just passing one by, and I did turn around because I did not know, how the hell does he know?
Well, one thing about it, I left off one thing. When I first teach couples circulate, I tell them, we're going to promenade to the next spot. We're going to promenade to the next spot. And the next spot, Michael, I don't know, you might not have them there, but we have Taco Bell here. So you're going to promenade to Taco Bell. Then you're going to promenade to Burger King. Or der Wiener Schnitzel.
Kentucky Fried, right. We got Wiener Schnitzel, Wiener Wald.
The main thing I was thinking about when Bob was saying that was that, I wouldn't use Taco Bell because the Taco Bell's motto is think outside the box, and I don't want them to think outside the box. But the other thing that occurred to me was that if you do this workshop, promenade to this one, to that one, to the other one, all the food things, when you're done with that, then you can finish with, bend the line, circle to the left till you're home, and you're probably really hungry now. It's time for the break. and you deserve a break today, so let's all go.
Oh, that would be good. If they're serving refreshments, I will use that, Chris.
And you remember, you deserve a break today at McDonald's, right?
I'm just hoping that we don't get any copyright infringements for all of the product placement that we're doing here today.
Well, let's put Pizza Hut and Dunkin' Donut in there, and nobody can be mad.
That's right.
What about Sweden, Hannah? Do they have Köttbullar?
Oh, Hannah, I got a quick question for Hannah. When you sent me the song today, what language were you swinging, or the middle break or closer, were you using Swedish as the second language?
No, it was Russian in the middle break and Polish at the end.
Yeah, she did English in the opener. We did. Yeah, it sounded nice. You can send me a cue sheet now.
Okay. What was that singing called? What song was that?
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
She actually recorded it in multiple languages for me. But today she sent me a version where it had 3 languages in it.
I like that. I want that.
That's cool, but on the other hand, with Russian language, don't you think Biden's gonna ban that?
Ooh.
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
that's okay.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could easily do what was one I did? High road, low road. I don't know if you've heard that. High road, low road, any old road you please. Da, 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 dee. The beat of that, or the theme of that, sounds like a Russian folk song, and it's a great one if you want to actually start using other languages, because it fits the metering of almost every poem out there.
The one that I like that's kind of like that is Starry Eyes, which is got in sort of an Eastern European kind of, it's almost like a klezmer tune. You know that one, Starry Eyes? That's an old one.
Yeah. Hang on a second. I'm just gonna play this for
I
you.
want to
see
get
what I
back to
mean.
I want to get back to the restaurants.
Hang on a second here.
How come we didn't say Arby's? That's a pirate's favorite restaurant. Arby's.
Hear it, Mel?
Can you hear that okay?
Nothing.
No.
Oh, you didn't hear anything. Hang on a second.
No.
See if I can.
We can hear you, but the music is muted.
1 second.
Oh God.
Can you hear the music now?
Yes.
What's the name of that song?
That's Any Old Side Road, or sorry, hang on a second. It's Same Old Side Road.
I was waiting
Same
to
old
see the Russian dancers. That's about the right speed.
Now that one goes high road, low road, any old side road, didn't know better than me if it gets me back to you. But you can also do that as Я вас люблю, любовь еще будет может, душе моей гасла не совсем. There's a poem by Pushkin.
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah, and it fits perfectly to the
Sounds like a
metering.
personal problem.
And do you know what that means, Mel?
Yes, I do actually.
Well, the rest of it.
Я вас люблю.
That
The
I
basic,
know.
basic translation is "I once loved you." Я вас люблю, любовь еще быть может, в душе моей гасла не совсем. Is roughly, I once loved you, and perhaps I still do. For the memory of you is burning in my heart, and it goes on like that. It's a very rough translation, but
I was
it's
going
a
to say
great.
Gesundheit, but that's not it.
But it's your typical Russian tragedy type poem.
Or you could just sing, say, "Я не говорю по-русски." I don't speak Russian.
You could.
But isn't
You
actually,
don't need to
isn't
speak it. You don't need to
on,
speak it. It's enough if you sing it.